This should be shorter than the other team history videos because Columbus has 20 years. Well, 19 seasons. They're going at their 20th season now. And so, really, in all honesty, um, there's not a whole lot to go over when you look at it compared to like Chicago, Montreal, any of the original six, even the 1967 expansion. And tomorrow, of course, well, not tomorrow, but the next entry on the list would be Dallas, and of course that would include the North Stars, and then that's a whole other thing. The one thing with Columbus is a bit of an identity crisis. Original logo, this was the main. This is the secondary. There's their mascot. You've got this is currently their third, and a lot of people would like to see this as their logo rather than this. Although this is still an improvement from this, and that's in 20 years. One thing that remains the same is they're blue. They're blue, and that makes sense because blue jackets, blue jerseys. Leave it that way. Now, their all-time leading scorer is Rick Nash, and with 289 goals, 257 assists, 547 points, he's going to stay there for a while. Cam Atkinson's the next one on the list. He's, of course, an active Blue Jacket, but 186 goals, 156 assists, 342 points tells you Nash has got nothing to worry about when it comes to being number one on the Blue Jacket scoring list. David Vaborny, 113 goals, 204 assists, 317 points. Nick Foligno, 125 goals, 162 assists, 287 points. RJ Umberger, nice even totals for Umberger. 120 goals, 130 assists, 250 points. Brandon Dubinsky, 72 goals, 153 assists, 225 points. Boone Jenner's about to get 200 points. He has 102 goals, 97 assists, 199 points. And Ryan Johansson, 79 goals, 114 assists, 193 points. Fedor Tutin, 39 goals, 146 assists, 185 points. And Nikolai Zherdev rounds out your top 10 with 76 goals, 105 assists, and 181 points. And yet his career overall is seen as somewhat of a disappointment. Your wins leaders, this isn't even close. Sergei Bobrovsky, 213. He is far and away number one, and he's going to be number one for quite a while. Steve Mason's number two at 96. Then Mark Denis at 84. Pascal Leclerc at 45. And Jonas Korpisalo, who may very well be their starter this coming season, 41. So, goaltending, it's Bobrovsky, Mason, Denis, and then whoever, basically. And Leclerc was supposed to be the big star goaltender when they drafted him, and it didn't work out that way. There's a lot of number one draft picks, first round draft picks they've had that haven't turned out. Coaching wins, John Tortorella leads the way with 176, Todd Richards 127, Ken Hitchcock 125, Dave King 64, and Gerard Gallant with 56. And I think it goes without saying that Tortorella's been the best coach they've had because they've made the playoffs 3 straight seasons. Captains, Lyle Odeline from 2000 to 2002, Whitney 02-03, Richardson 2003 to 2006, Adam Foote 2005 to 2008, Rick Nash 2008 to 2012, and then there's a break before they went back to having a captain, and from 2015 until now, 2019, it's been Nick Foligno. So 6 captains, nice small total, leaves a lot of room, and that's kind of nice. They are a team with no retired numbers, and when you haven't got past the first round except once in your entire existence, it makes sense not to be retiring any numbers. Playoffs, they made them 5 out of 19 times. That includes the fact they've been in the playoffs the last 3 years in a row. So it was 2 of the first 16. 2019 is the first time, of course, they've gone beyond round 1. And them going beyond round 1 is a big part of the reason why I decided to update this playlist. No playoffs in their first 7 seasons, twice in the first 12, and then, of course, was another few years before they got back, and now they're at 5 out of 19. John H. McConnell guaranteed an NHL arena to Gary Bettman in 1996. So well before they were announced as being an expansion team and a team was put in Columbus, the first team in the NHL in Ohio since the Cleveland Barons, John McConnell pulls aside Bettman and goes, "Don't worry about it. We'll get it built." And they did. It was built for 2000. I believe it cost $150 million for Nationwide Arena. And so That's how they ended up getting Columbus. Was an owner who went, yeah, I'll fund it myself if I got to. Some owners don't do that. Some owners are like, we need the public money. We're not getting public money. Oh, I guess we have to leave. Always found that weird with billionaires doing that. If you're so gung ho that this building's just gonna make tons of money, why aren't you building it? And that's always the thought I have when it comes to these new NHL buildings that teams need when they go, hey, we want public funds. Why are you worried it's not going to make money and you don't want to assume all the risk? No division titles for Columbus. They never won their division. And their first playoff game victory was against Pittsburgh in 2014. And I remember kind of going crazy when they won that game. Like, oh, Pittsburgh finally, Columbus wins a game and it's against Pittsburgh. And then, of course, they lost that series in 6. $80 million is what Columbus paid for their expansion fee. So when you look at their history, you look at what they paid for an expansion, and you say, hey, it's 20-some years later, and Seattle's going to pay $650 million. This is part of the reason why Seattle and Vegas are given better players. I think it's part you get what you pay for. The expansion fee is so high, the NHL can't justify it and not give you a good team. And I think Columbus is a good example of, just taking money and not leaving a great expansion roster. What it does, it took them years to get better. Now, top 10 draft picks. So yeah, we're already up to the top 10 draft picks because, again, it's 20-year history. It's relatively easy compared to other teams to get through it. Top 10 draft picks. In 2000, they drafted 4th, Rusty Klasla, as he would become known. Rostislav Klasla, his name. 2001, they draft 8th overall, Pascal Leclerc. 2002, they draft 1st, Rick Nash. 2003, they draft 4th, Nikolai Zherdev. 2004, they draft 8th, Alexander Picard. 2005, they draft 6th, Gilbert Brulé. 2006, they draft 6th again, Derek Brassard. 2007, they draft 7th, Jacob Voracek. 2008, they draft 6th, Nikita Filatov. Remember him? He was going to be a huge star. 2010, they draft 4th, Ryan Johansson. 2012, they draft 2nd, Ryan Murray. 2015, they draft 8th, Zach Werenski. In 2016, they draft 3rd, and that's Pierre-Luc Dubois. What stands out is how many times in 20 years they've drafted in the top 10. And not only that, but then you look at the misses. You look at Pascal Leclerc, he was supposed to be their starting goaltender, and it never really clicked. And he ends up being traded. Nikolai Zherdev never reached that level that he was expected to as a player. Alexander Picard never became a full-time NHL player. Gilbert Brulé, famously, fans around here anyways, seem to blame Columbus's scouting and their development department when it came to Gilbert Brulé being a failure at the NHL level. With them, he goes to Edmonton, has one pretty good season, and then it fell off for him. Brassard was good. Voracek, of course, they ended up trading him. Filatov, as I mentioned, he was supposed to be a star. It never happened. Johansson, fine. Ryan Murray. I would argue a lot of the criticism Murray gets is unfair, but it'll still be there. Werenski and Dubois have been pretty solid picks. And I think the fact that the most recent picks, the 4 most recent top 10s you look at, have been very good draft picks, I think that's why this team has started achieving some success. Their scouting has got better. Their trading seems to have gotten better as well. And just in general, this team's headed in the right direction. And Tortorella is the best coach they've had. And I'm saying that knowing Hitchcock's on the board. For Columbus, for what this team is, or for what this team could be, John Tortorella is the best guy for the job. I would not rule out him getting fired at some point because coaches get fired all the time. But that being said, Tortorella is going to be their coach this year. And I think, honestly, they'd have to bomb out of the playoffs for him to be gone. And even then, when you look at the players they've lost this year in the offseason, I don't necessarily think that missing the playoffs would necessarily mean that Tortorella loses his job. I think two in a row he could lose his job, but I think if they miss the playoffs this year, as long as it's not like a complete disaster, I think he'll stick around. Now, trades. And these are trades of note. And there's one that's out of order, so I had to put an arrow to make sure that I did it in the right order. June 7th, 2000. So this is before the expansion draft. Colorado who has Mark Denis, and they don't have any need for him. Trade him to Columbus in exchange for a second round draft pick. And then there were a ton of trades that were about free, considerations for expansion, and I said I'm not writing all those down. March 13th, 2001, Columbus acquires Ray Whitney. Florida acquires Kevin Adams in a 2001 fourth. Ray Whitney's kind of the king of being traded for less than what you think he should have been. Ray Whitney is the guy who's been left for dead when in terms of his NHL career time and time and time again. June 22nd, 2002, Columbus acquires the number 1 draft pick, which is Rick Nash from Florida. Florida, with the number 3 draft pick, takes Jay Bouwmeester, and they had the option to swap draft picks in 2003, which is not exercised, meaning Florida had the higher draft pick. So that's an interesting trade. You don't see that very often. June 26, 2004, Columbus acquires the number 8 draft pick, which is Picard, and a second round draft pick. Carolina gets the number 4 overall pick, which is Andrew Ladd. So that'll stand as a loss. October 8th, 2005, Columbus acquires Jason Chimera, Cale Hulse, and Michael Rupp. Arizona acquires Tim Jackman and Jeff Sanderson. Sanderson had a decent run with Arizona. Sanderson was one of those guys, too, that he played in a lot of places, and he would show a lot of spark. And there was always... He just ended up kind of leaving you wanting more at the end of it. Where you're like, yeah, he had a pretty good year, but there's more there, isn't there? Anyways, so I'll give Columbus that one, because Chimera had a good run with Columbus, as I remember it. November 15th, 2005, Columbus acquires Sergei Fedorov in a 2006 fifth-round draft pick. Anaheim acquires Francois Beauchemin and Tyler Wright. And this was just Brian Burke saying, I want to get rid of Fedorov. And it's weird, because Fedorov, who is known in Detroit as the best defensive forward in the league, sometimes played on the blue line for them. And in Anaheim, it just never clicked. Fedorov should have spent his entire career in Detroit. I really believe that. I don't think leaving Detroit did him any favors. May 16, 2007, Columbus acquires a 2007 fifth-round pick, which became Jamie Benn. And that was in exchange for Adam McQuaid going to Boston. So, yeah. Well, what did Columbus do with that pick? They traded it. On June 23rd, so a month after, Columbus acquires a 2007 fourth. A 2007 fifth goes to Dallas. That's 127th overall. They trade the 128th overall pick, which is Jamie Benn, and the 149th. So when you see those trades where, in this case, Columbus picks up a fourth-round pick, Dallas takes 3 fifth-rounders, Dallas had 3 shots at winning the lottery, and they won it with Jamie Benn at 128th overall. So it was Boston's draft pick that ends up in Dallas via Columbus. And so some of these draft picks that you see go through numerous hands, you might go, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does. June 20th, 2008, Columbus acquires R.J. Umberger and a 2008 fourth-round pick. Philadelphia gets a first-round pick in 2008, which is Lucas Biza, and a third. I will qualify that as a win for Columbus, even though R.J. Umberger at the time likely needed to be out of Philly. July 1st, 2008, Columbus acquires Rafi Torres, and Edmonton acquires Gilbert Brulé. It looks like a huge win for Edmonton out of the gate, but Brulé would quickly run out of gas, and most of his career has been spent in Europe. There's no shame in that, but he wasn't drafted 6th overall with the idea that he would be in Europe playing a lot of his career. March 4th, 2009, Columbus acquires Antoine Vermette. Ottawa acquires Pascal Leclerc and a 2009 second, which became Robin Lehner. I remember Leclerc goes to Ottawa, and they had a press conference, and he was going to be their goalie, and this was big, and it didn't really work out. And we'll get to that when I get to the Ottawa side of this thing, but yeah, it just... it didn't really work out. And Leclerc's one of those weird ones where he had all of the tools. He's on this top 5 board. He was not really a good starter for Columbus, and they moved on from him. And Vermette was a pretty good deal for them. I like Vermette a lot. June 23rd, 2011, Columbus acquires Jeff Carter. Here's where Columbus fans go, do you have to have that on the board? Yes. Philadelphia acquires Jacob Voracek, a 2011 first, which was Sean Couturier, and a third, which is Nick Cousins. So, ouch, ouch, and kind of an ouch. Kind of, sort of. Columbus, if they'd kept Voracek and Couturier, who knows where they could have been by now, right? Combined with everything else they have, and Couturier would have been the kind of center they don't have, and they haven't had for a while. February 23rd, 2012, Columbus acquires Jack Johnson and a 2013 first, which became Marco Dano. LA acquires Jeff Carter. So, in exchange for Voracek, Couturier, and Cousins, it turns into Jack Johnson and Marco Dano. Still not a great trade. And Jeff Carter was miserable in Columbus. And it was very nearly a trade of both Carter and Richards to Columbus, which I don't think would have been any better for Columbus. And that, if anything, it could have been worse. So Jeff Carter goes to LA and wins the Stanley Cup. No big deal there. June 22nd, 2012, Columbus makes a fantastic deal to make up for it. They get Sergei Bobrovsky from Philly in exchange for a 2012 fourth, which is Taylor Lear, and a second, which is Anthony Stolarz, and a 2013 fourth-round draft pick. So, not a bad deal for Columbus right there. And one of the draft picks that Philly takes back, they used to pick a goaltender who, well, let's see, Stolarz doesn't have an NHL job right now. You look at the list of goalies. The best he can hope for is a number 3 in an organization. July 1st, 2012, Columbus acquires Nick Foligno in exchange for Mark Mathot going to the Ottawa Senators. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that trade benefited both players and both teams. Mathot was great with Erik Karlsson in Ottawa, and Foligno is now a captain in Columbus. Kind of a face of the franchise, if you want to call him that. He's certainly in a lot of advertising. He's well known to Columbus fans, so good deal all around, and I don't think it was going to work out for Nick in Ottawa either. July 23rd, 2012, Columbus acquires Brandon Dubinsky, Artem Anisimov, Tim Erickson, and a 2013 first, which became Kirby Reichel. The New York Rangers acquire Rick Nash, Stephen Delisle, and a 2013 third-round pick, which became Pavel Buchnevich. Yeah, I looked that one up, because I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, Buchnevich got traded. That was the draft pick that they traded with Nash, and they got back Dubinsky, Anisimov, Erickson, and Kirby Reichel was the first-round draft pick. So sometimes when you get back a first-rounder and you trade a third, sometimes if things turn out the right way for you, sometimes you're trading away the better player in that third round. June 30th, 2015, Columbus acquires Brandon Saad, Alex Broadhurst, and Michael Paliota. The Chicago Blackhawks acquire Marco Dano, Artem Anisimov, Corey Tropp, Jeremy Morin, and a 2016 fourth. And of course, as I mentioned in the Chicago video, Jeremy Morin was a guy that everybody thought, if with the right circumstance and and it just never really worked. January 6th, 2016, this was the one that really caught me off guard, that made me kind of go, what? Seth Jones is traded to Columbus, Ryan Johansson traded to Nashville. And I say that because at the time, I thought Columbus's blue line was solid. I thought they needed another center, and here they were trading a center to Nashville. And Nashville looked pretty good up front as well. I thought it was weird. I could understand Nashville trading Jones, kind of. Except that I thought, well, he's younger than the other guys. Wouldn't you want to trade out one of the veterans and leave him in there? But, Nashville worked out pretty well for them. It was just a weird trade at the time because I thought both teams were making a move that just seemed odd to me. Both players, though, have seemed to be quite happy since this deal went through. June 25th, 2016, Columbus acquires Scott Harrington. Toronto acquires Kirby Reichel. I'm going to go ahead and say that's a win for Columbus, in that Harrington's still in Columbus and Kirby Reichel is still struggling to find a job in the National Hockey League. Reichel is one of those guys that, and again, there are first rounders usually that end up in this situation where they'll fail to break through with their team, and another GM will say, I'm going to take a shot at this. Jesse Puljujarvi is likely going to be another one of those that some GM somewhere is going to say, I'm going to take a shot at this. I think this kid can do it. Some cases it's a good idea, but in many cases it just doesn't work. So there's that deal, and then June 23rd, 2017, Artemi Panarin, Tyler Mott, and a 2017 sixth are acquired by Columbus. Brendan Saad, Anton Forsberg, and a 2018 fifth are acquired by the Chicago Blackhawks. So this was Saad going back to Chicago, and all was well. Of course, Panarin ends up out of Columbus. We know what happened there, but that's just the risk they took. And then they went all in. And I had to put these trades up here because they went all in at the deadline. I only included the 2 deals with Ottawa. And it's stunning because they were done back to back. One day and one the next. So on February 22nd, 2019, Columbus acquires Matt Duchene and Julius Bergman, who got moved on to the Rangers after that. Ottawa acquires Vitaly Abramov, Jonathan Davidson, 2019 first, which became Lassie Thompson, and Thompson has already signed his entry-level contract with Ottawa. Then on February 23rd, so the day after, Columbus acquires Ryan Dzingel in exchange for Anthony Duclair, who is still with Ottawa, re-signed with them, a 2020 second and a 2021 third. So Columbus really gave up a lot, and they didn't draft until I think it was 104th or somewhere around there in the draft this year. Columbus, as they finally achieved some playoff success in getting to them, and then in 2019 finally achieved success in getting out of the first round. Now the challenge is going to be overcoming losing players and prospects. They've lost both in that they didn't have the draft picks this year, and the players that they acquired for those draft picks chose to go somewhere else. Columbus is an interesting team. There's a lot to look at here and say, you know what, they'll probably go back to drafting in the top 10, but maybe not. Maybe John Tortorella can get more out of them than we're expecting. But let me know what you guys think. Are the Columbus Blue Jackets going to be looking at playoffs for another few years, and they're going to continue this success, or are we headed into another dark time for Columbus fans? And if you're a Columbus fan, there's been enough dark times. You really want some sustained success. And Jarmo Kekalainen going all in at the deadline, I still think it was the right call. I know there's people saying, "Oh, look at that! See, it was a bad call. Look what happened." But honestly, you had to give it a shot, because when your team hasn't got out of the playoffs once, like out of the first round once in 18 seasons, you've got to go for it. And they looked like they were in pretty good shape at the deadline, stumbled into the playoffs, and then they swept the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that's a pretty big deal, and we'll see whether or not they can continue it on. I think the loss of Duchene and Dzingel's been overblown because Duchene and Dzingel weren't really part of that success. I think losing Panarin and Bobrovsky hurts. It's the loss of Bobrovsky that really hurts, and we'll see what it does to them next season. But there you go. The history of the Columbus Blue Jackets from 2000 until now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, thank you guys so much for watching and for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.